Hello everyone, how are you? I am sitting here trying to see because my allergies are so bad that I want to just claw at my eyes. I've never had allergies this bad in my life. Look at them. Anyway, moving on. You don't want to look at my bloodshot eyes. So periodically I start doing this. Don't mind me just suffering through it. So tonight, this afternoon, today, whatever, I'm going to talk about something that's it's one of those hot topics in the church. It's in the hot topics amongst Christians. And it's really a very taboo subject, and that's mental health amongst Christians. Mental health. It can be so taboo, it's crazy. I remember when I was in seminary, we were all talking in a pastoral counseling class, and one of my friends actually brought up the subject that he said that a pastor friend of his was well loved throughout his church. Everybody loved him. Everybody thought the world of him. I mean, all hail King Pastor. Everything was hunky-dory. And then one day, something happened that changed the pastor's life. I know this is going to sound shocking to you, but believe it or not, this sort of action is not that rare within churches. Some of his congregants, some of the people within the church, went out there and went through his garbage. And they actually found a couple drugs for depression, empty pill bottles, called a meeting, and they immediately fired him. Now, I know that that sounds far-fetched, but you would be surprised how people react to that. As far as somebody having mental illness, they go, whoosh. For years, I would not talk to anybody about my combat PTSD. I just wouldn't do it because I felt like a failure. Like I was failing God because I was experiencing nightmares and dreams and things like that and wouldn't sleep for weeks. And it wasn't actually just until 2 months ago when I finally realized that, you know what? It is something that I can get help with and still be a good Christian. I can still be saved. I know a lot of people who are going through PTSD. They've experienced death and trauma within their family who will not go to seek mental help because others have told them that that means you're not strong enough in your walk with Jesus. I have seen it so many times. Today, I was planning on doing this. I've taken a dip, been feeling real well, got some, I took a couple days off, and talk about this. I hope this thing's going because it keeps saying that I'm off the air and I'm not sure if I am or not. But anyway, today before I got ready to go on with this live feed, somebody got a hold of me and they actually said, I wish I was dead. And I thought, oh my gosh, wow, what, I've done that. I'd already planned to do this and talk about that. And then all of a sudden God says, okay, you're going to talk about it. Here it is. Well, I talked to the guy for quite a while, actually. I really did. We talked and talked and talked. And then I gave him the resources to go ahead and contact somebody because he didn't want to contact anybody or talk to anybody because he felt like the church would look down on him. But anyway, I treated him with the same love and respect that he would have gotten if he had a physical disease, because mental illness can be a physical factor. We'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. So, boom, here it is, placed in my lap, and I thought, well, that's just something God's just saying, go ahead and go with it. So, let's start talking about it now. Once again, it's a controversial subject, is within the church. If you start talking about different reactions, some people will embrace you, some act like you have leprosy. It's a bizarre and sad topic within the church because people don't want to talk about it. because they don't understand it. So the first thing we have to remember is that mental illness can be a physical issue. It can be physical. And what I mean by that is this. I had a nurse practitioner friend of mine. She was an amazing woman of God who I asked her about, mental illness one time and why people look at it kind of like, stay away from me, it's contagious. And she said, you know what? I really don't know. Because if somebody's diabetic and they take insulin, they'll fill the insulin syringe up for them and help them. She goes, but mental illness can be caused by a chemical imbalance within the brain. But if you say that you have a chemical imbalance in the brain, they are going to really, really, really stay away from you and condemn you. So we've seen that. Now, somebody just said mental illness is a result of the fall. We'll talk about that a little later. But don't just go out there, and that's the kind of reaction that we see a lot of times. People will go, oh, it's all because of this or that or that. But we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. But it can definitely be from physical. And the reason why, what I'm thinking they're probably talking about, the person who just chimed in, I can see it on my screen, they said, mental illness is as a result of the fall. Well, it is as a result of the fall in one way. And when I say that, it's because, we've sinned. Adam and Eve sinned. Here we are, we're still sinners. So our bodies aren't immortal like Jesus or do. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But when we look at the Word of God, we will see people and biblical examples that we consider holy, fantastic, amazing men and women of God that went through it. Some of the examples are David. David in Psalms 38 verse 4, he expressed depression, loneliness, anger, the whole works. Job did it. Everybody talks about what a great man of God Job was and how he was patient and he was good. He withstood it. But there were times during the book of Job where you will see that Job lost it. He lost it. And his friends kept coming up to him and saying, this is a big one. They keep saying, you're going through these trials as a result of your sin. That's one of the worst things you could say to somebody with mental illness or any illness, because it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. So what happened was Job just walked away and said, you know what? I'm crazy. And somebody else here, just real quick, I'm watching, and forgive me, you guys, but I like when people interact. And Lou just said, Job never gave up faith in God. And you're absolutely right, Lou. I'm so sorry. These allergies are kicking my butt. I'm wondering if I should have even done it today. But anyway, we see Job go through it. We see Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4. We see Elijah going through it. We see Jonah going through it in chapter 4, verse 3. All of these people experience depression, anger, loneliness, bitterness, all of these things that we would call mental health issues today. But we also have to remember that in the old days when the Bible was originally written, and even up until recently, we didn't really call it mental illness back then, like PTSD, for an example. Used to, PTSD was called shell shock. They're shell shocked, they're good to go, just, go over there and suck it up, buttercup, and fix it. So, having said that, before I get on, I'm so sorry, you guys. Before I get off on too big of a tangent, we have to remember that mental illness can be a physical issue. On treating those people that do have mental illness the same as we would with somebody who had diabetes, cancer, or whatever. Because sometimes mental illness, not all the times, but sometimes mental illness can in fact be a physical condition, a chemical imbalance within the brain. So if you know someone who's taking medication for it and being treated for it, don't ever walk up to them and say, you're weak, your faith needs to be stronger, you sinned, or something like that, because none of that is true. It's a chemical imbalance. Earlier, somebody mentioned because of the fall. Absolutely. So let's start getting into that now. So we know it can be a physical issue, right? But it can, and oftentimes is a spiritual issue as well. And it can even be combined. So it can even be combined. And really, you guys, I'm so sorry for my voice and my eyes and everything shut and closed, but allergies are kicking my rear, but I still felt like I had to get through this and do this. So a lot of times our depression, anxiety, anger, whatever you're going through, can be a result of physical conditions. Somebody just told me to stop apologizing, but I feel really bad about this. But anyway, they're absolutely right. You can go through it as far as physical conditions go, so there's the chemical imbalances within the brain, but we are subject to spiritual issues as well. There's a lot of different times that we will see the consequences or mental illness be as a consequence of sin. Now that, remember earlier, I said that doesn't always have to be the case. It doesn't. But if you look in Psalms 51, my favorite Psalms of all, you'll see that David started out Psalm 51 right away saying, "Forgive me, Lord." He was overcome with guilt, anger, and depression because he had had an affair with Bathsheba. And to boot, to even top all that off, he sent Bathsheba's husband, who was an army general, off to war where he knew he would be killed, and he died. I mean, that's a double whammy. So the first thing, what happened with David? He became depressed, angry, lonely because of what he had done. So the gentleman who said earlier, and I'm sorry I forgot who it was, who said it is because of the fall, it is. There's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that, so I give you kudos. You're right on the nose. So it can be physical, or it can actually be as spiritual and physical as both. So it can be both things. Either way, here's what we need to be doing. If it is spiritual, we need to be praying with the person. If it is physical, we need to be praying with the person. No matter what it is, we need to be praying. That's the first and foremost. We need to treat them as if they had cancer or diabetes or something like that, because they're no different than us. And I almost guarantee you that anyone who is watching this here today has at one point or time gone through some series of depression or anxiety or something today. How would you feel, or how did you feel, if you would have said that to somebody and they would have turned their back on you and treated you like you had the plague? It's okay to admit that you're having struggles and trials. It's okay to admit that you have depression, that you have anxiety. Because if we all came together within the church and started supporting them instead of condemning them, I'm going to guarantee you there would be a lot more stronger of Christians sitting in the pews today. Because everybody, they're saying right now that approximately 2 out of 5 people suffer from depression or anxiety. So every time you look out into your church or the list of your friends, and you take a group of 5, you're going to see 2 of them, almost half of them, are going to be struggling with it. And I don't think that's accurate. I almost guarantee, remember I don't say guarantee much, that there's many more than that. So mental illness, if you know somebody who's struggling with it, don't shame them, don't avoid them, because avoidance is one of the worst things you can actually do. Walk up to them, give them a hug, give them a prayer, but here's how you do it. You don't walk up and say, "Are you going through depression?" If you suspect somebody is, just walk up there and just say, "Hey, how you doing?" I always say that's the first thing you should ask anybody. Just ask, "How are you doing?" If they sit there and go, "I'm okay," you kind of look a little sad there, depressed. Just ask them, get to the point. But the biggest thing we have to do is show them that we care. Just love them where they're at. There is nothing wrong with somebody admitting that they have depression or anxiety. By the way, the gentleman I did talk to earlier today, he just sent me a text while we're doing this. I multitask, I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. But I looked down there and he said that he's actually going in for to see somebody right away, preferably ER where I referred him to. but let's pray for him. So I want to do one thing. If you guys are out there, if anybody's suffering from depression, anxiety, or anything, don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to get a mental health evaluation. Now that sounds all fancy and everything, but basically all you have to do is walk into somebody, go into your pastor even. That's a good thought that just kind of bing, did God put into my head. Pastor and people within the church a lot of times will be there to support you like you just cannot believe. So having said that, find somebody, but don't try to go through it alone. If you think you can't go to anybody you know, I guarantee you can always call me. You can always direct message me on Facebook, but get some help. Don't try to do it alone because it's way too hard to do. But I will say one thing, Psalm 51 is one of the best things. If you're struggling with any kind of mental illness, go to Psalm 51 because it talks about renewing the spirit as well as the body. So I kind of ranted on a little bit today, but I got to tell you, it's something that's very near and dear to my heart because it's something I've just started experiencing myself and finally came down and was able to talk about it. Before I close, I do want to say one thing. If you do go in and you see a mental health professional about it, a lot of people will not do that because they say it's too secular. Well, I can tell you one thing right here and right now. What I learned from the secular mental health professional working and helping me to get through my PTSD, I actually used in a Christ-like manner and applied it to Christian principles and helped that gentleman today. I didn't, the Holy Spirit did. But I'm telling you right now, you can take what a secular person does and tells you to do and apply biblical principles to it, and it will become Christian. So don't be sitting here thinking that if I go to a secular mental health professional that I'm abandoning God. Don't do that because it's not true. Anyway, I'll drop it there, leave it. So just in closing, if you guys know of anybody that's struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar, the other big one is survivor's guilt. When somebody passes away, you feel guilty because you're still alive and they're not. Don't be afraid to hug them, love them, and just help them where they're at. Support them. Don't shun them. So I'll let you guys go on that. Hopefully I'll be able to see through my eyes tomorrow. This is the worst swelling I've ever had. But anyway, love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me, and we will talk tomorrow. Don't forget, there's more people starting to sign up on my YouTube channel. Please don't forget, if you have a chance to go on there, I'll put the link at the end of this one, the description on this. So you can go ahead and go click there. You'll be able to see a variety of different topics on the Bible or how the Bible addresses topics to today. So anyway, love you guys. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.